Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, it's ready.
Okay. So, yes. So, as I said, I was talking about my background. I talked to this slide already. So, a little bit back about my academic experience. I'm an assistant professor at Farmingdale State College, leading SUNY's first undergraduate program in UX. So, the program I'm working on is very experimental, but we're having a lot of fun doing it. Before that, I was at RIT, did a postdoc in Edinburgh, of course, did my PhD in Florence, and I had my undergraduate at Temple University in Philadelphia doing fine arts. So basically, my background is a mix of fine arts and interaction design or user experience design. But I have a lot of industry experience as well, and had two startup companies, worked for Fujifilm and Walmart as senior UX lead. Did a whole bunch of work for a design studio called through Verizon, and worked at Kodak. I have some good Kodak stories if anyone's interested later down the road. So good stuff. So a lot of the outcomes I'm going to talk about today have real implication. Sometimes when I see academic presentations or presentations that skewed more academic, they go, how does this apply to industry, right? So I do want to say that before we begin, my startup company used the tools that I'm about to show you today to make mobile apps called TorBlend, which is, if you go there, frankly, right now it's under construction. So another few weeks that will be back live. We got hacked by China twice. Long story, very sad, but we're getting back online soon. Anyway, the company is more of a patent company now. So you see on the right-hand side, these are all of the patents that were, not all of them, but most of them were generated thinking about blended experiences and what that means for the production of new technology. So, okay, designing blended experience. Okay, what is this I'm talking about? So, to take a couple steps back, we hear this term mixed reality thrown around a lot. And mixed reality was coined in 1994, so it's an old term. And mixed reality is a spectrum of all kinds of different tools and technologies. Everything from VR, which we often talk about, all the way to the real environment. And there's augmented reality, augmented virtually, and everything else in between. So it's a very wide spectrum. And I think the reason why I talk about this slide is because a lot of people just throw around this word mixed reality or VR, and everyone's talking about different things in reality, and no pun intended. And I'm just trying to ground it in some of the literature and some of where this historically has been coming from. For a long time, MIT and the Tangible Media Group have been looking at this notion of, in the 90s and early 2000s, digital information was clickable only, right? With the iPhone, you're able to swipe, make gestures, and now you're able to touch some things, right? So the digital information is coming out into our physical space. And the researchers at MIT said, they proposed in, 1997, that digital information will take physical form. Okay, what does that mean? I have a really nice example. If anyone's seen this, I don't believe there's audio, but just a little bit of music. So what you're seeing here is digital information taking physical form. This is not CGI. This is water droplets being timed through flash photography to mirror human motion. So this is what we mean when we talking about digital information taking physical form. The maths behind this is intriguing. I can share you some of the links to these videos because they're just fun to watch anyway. You can watch this again and again and not be bored, frankly, because it's so cool. However, blended spaces and what we're going to talk about today are more than just mixed realities. They have their own properties, their own experiences. In other words, blended spaces extends mixed reality with some various tools. One of them is called conceptual blending or blended theory. It comes from linguistic research. I don't want to go into this detail. It's a presentation in all of itself. It's very deep and thick, and you might go to sleep in a little bit. But fundamentally, it's this idea, frenemy. Maybe you might not know what it means, or maybe you know what it means immediately. But if you've never seen this word before, you might be able to say friend, enemy, frenemy. wow, okay, I get it. You might have seen this word before. And the idea here is, can I create a mixed reality technology where if I look at it or I use it, I understand it as quickly as I can understand frenemy? A great example of frenemy is, Professor X and Magneto, of course, as we know, like any Marvel fans out there. So it's a nice example of conceptual blending, taking two different ideas and blending them together to make a new meaning out of it. The second part of design new blends comes from presence theory, and we talked about this last week with Anastasia's presentations. We have gorilla arms. When you're in VR, it's the idea of, sure, you're in this cool VR experience, but the goggles steam, the goggles get too heavy, and your neck starts hurting. So you're like, it hurts physically. And when you do that, you break the blend, or you break the illusion of non-mediation. You break the sense of being completely engaged in the digital technology you're interacting with. In the center, Minority Report, famous example, Tom Cruise is flinging his hands around, making this cool interface gestures, fantastic, right? Do that for a minute, and your triceps are going to die, right? I mean, or maybe in the future, everyone's got massive triceps. That could be, or you're Tom Cruise. Either way, it works. And regardless, so essentially what blended spaces are is mixed reality coupled with conceptual blending and presence theory. And that's what designing blending spaces is all about. And I'm going to go and break this down for you so you understand where I'm coming from. But generally speaking, this is the kind of framework we're looking at. And so essentially, blended spaces are environments. It's about the physical place rather than the product. It's not about the app. It's not about the VR goggles. It's not about the AR headset. It's about the physical place taking on new meaning. And the experience that you have in that place is the product. That's the difference. For example, wonderful example, this is British Airways. So there's a little advertisement there for British Airways. It's I think it's a Piccadilly Circus, I think. But basically, they took big data of the airplane, air traffic going into London Heathrow, and linked it up with the video. So we're blending two different spaces. We're blending the digital space and the physical space to make a new experience in Piccadilly Circus. You might have seen this one. This was fairly old, but at least it gives you a good idea. This is called Pepsi Max. You might have seen this before. Unfortunately, you can't hear anything, but it's not really that important. I'll just let it play for a second. Maybe you can hear this. I don't know. Probably sounds worse. So that's how it works. It's this really cool. So basically, the reason why you may have seen that before, it's fairly old. The important thing here is that when we talk about blended spaces, designers are not designing for a product, as we said before, but layers of experiences. And it's really important to think about because, for example, designers of that system designed for fear. Even if it was for a moment, the woman on the left in the upper left-hand corner, there was a genuine look of fear about her. And that was real, even if it was for a moment, right? Once the fear is overcome, or the surprise maybe, there's an investigation phase. Okay, what's going on here? I know that's not quite right, but let's find out. But then after that, the investigation phase, there's like a playful phase where people start playing around with it. They start pretending they're being chased by tigers, and they're having a good time and having a good laugh around it. So when we think about blended spaces, it's not just about one experience. It's about layers of experiences and how they develop and impact the physical environment. Okay, Brian, great. So fair. Okay, how do you do this, Brian? Fair enough. Good question. All right, so this is so in 2013, it was my first grant that was awarded by New York Council for the Arts to develop a mobile experience using augmented reality at a heritage site in upstate New York. And unfortunately, you can't hear the audio so well, but it's okay. Here's some examples of that. This system uses geolocations to trigger augmented reality content all around you. And I'll talk about some of this details in a little bit. The point here is, this might seem like Pokemon Go, but the cool thing about this came out 3 years before Pokemon Go, because we used the blended spaces model. Sure, we're not chasing around Pokemon at this historical village. We're finding augmented reality historical characters. Fair enough. We're not finding Pikachu, but we're finding, who might have lived there at these villages 200 years ago. With the grant money, I was able to put together a team of various researchers, technicians, practitioners, and content developers to make this program work. And our place of study was called Genesee Village Country Museum. So if anyone knows Williamsburg, Virginia, fantastic place. It's a colonial Williamsburg. This is almost as big as colonial Williamsburg. Many of the homes here in this village were saved by the construction of the New York Thruway. So the gentleman who put this village together basically adopted all these homes to be built on his property. So this is 75 acres of property, and there's like 300 houses from the 18th and 19th century that captures American history and American architecture. It's a fantastic place. So if you want to learn more about these old houses, American houses, and please take the notion of old with a grain of salt. This is America old. I realize that 1809 and anywhere else in the world is like yesterday, but for America, that's old. So just throwing that out there. Okay, so anyway, this is how the Genesee Village Country Museum provided digital information to their visitors. They slapped a little sign on the side of the house and said, call it up and get information. And the experience is like trying to call up your insurance company to make a claim. It's terrible. So we didn't do that at all. What we did, we thought about geolocated interactions through geofencing and the Internet of Things. And we applied the framework that I've been talking about for a while now to the situation. We looked at the physical space. We looked at the maps. We looked at the people who were currently there. We looked at the relationships between houses and houses. And we looked at how do these places change over time. In the winter, I might get one experience. In the summer, I'll get a completely different experience. And what does that mean for our product that we're going to make? Of course, we looked at the digital space, which was like, what can you do with maps? How do you create AR? How do you create mobile apps? And volatility, which means change. Okay, well, I need to be aware that satellites move because we move, and that can change the geofence location ever so slightly. So you have to be aware of that. So this is a generic space here. And in this village, there's a house, there's a blacksmith, there's a farm shed, and a schoolhouse. So what? It's kind of boring. But through the blended spaces framework, we created new meaning to these places by putting a story around all these different places. So for example, the blacksmith is not just the blacksmith, it's the sanctuary where you escape to get away from the school teacher, Miss Donovan. And mental note, 19th century school teachers weren't very nice. So we generated all these augmented reality characters to go on these different places. We evaluated it as we normally do. We looked at presence theory. For example, we looked at presence. Some of the students were actually really concerned about the augmented reality characters. They actually were genuinely concerned about these AR characters out there in the field. So much so they were like running to these characters to save them. And we're like, slow down. We don't want to get, a lawsuit here. don't run to these places. Please walk. But another interesting finding was the students that we evaluated this against, there were fifth graders. They were like, this is all great. Everybody, you created this cool mobile app with the cool AR people, but we don't really want this. We want something else. Okay, well, that's great. So basically we handed over the keys to the school children and said, all right, what can you do, right? So my master's students partnered up with the fifth graders to design and evaluate their mobile experiences for tourism with public schools children. So again, the private school fifth graders partnered up with my master's students. They did design, and then my master's students and the private school students who built the system evaluated their product with public school kids. I hope that's clear. So we did, this is basically user-centered design 101. We did the collaboration phase, we did the research phase, we did the design thinking phase. We had museum curators come into the classroom. We did all this great work. The students were taking ownership of their ideas. So basically all these students were doing UX, really, and they were fifth graders. Then this got really real because the students started developing their own experiences, so they had to augment themselves to physical locations at Genesee Village Country Museum. So we had all these different outtakes, and this is when their story started to really come alive because they had to get into character and really think about their storytelling. Of course, before the evaluation, as good researchers, we did a lot of bug checks and everything else. And this is a fun story on the left. This is me debugging geofences in an 18th century schoolhouse with my tablet chalkboard computer. So that was good fun. So I got my little tablet chalkboard over there. We're trying to figure out, well, why isn't the geofences working? Well, it was because we made them too small, right? So we had to like play with it and take our notes back. So you can see my little classroom bell right there. Oh, it was great. It was great. This is one of the highlights of my research project right here. Just being an 18th century schoolhouse. It's pretty cool. Anyway, the product that we created was designed by fifth graders, produced by fifth graders, and evaluated by fifth graders. So this was some of the work that the fifth graders put together. This was their story. And the story they created was about how in the 19th century, education really wasn't valued. If you made it to sixth grade, you were considered like a college graduate. The focus was more about being home and working the farm, and the focus was, frankly, if you were a girl, a woman, it was almost impossible to get a good education, if an education at all. So this whole experience was about being a young girl, basically being encouraged to not go to school in the 19th century, right? So it was really fun what the students put together here. And these red marks you see here we call them junction alerts, but they're basically bullies who bully the user to get back into the story, because frankly, if they went too far to the right, they would physically be out of the physical space. They would be physically out of the digital space. So the story would fall apart completely. So these little junction alerts says, whoa. They bully you to go back into the story. So again, the fifth graders came up with this stuff. It's brilliant. These are some of the AR characters that they created themselves. Unfortunately, this is one of the girls. She was fantastic. She's a school teacher. I don't know if you can hear this.
Well, you're late. It looks like you were doing some errands. This time I'll let you off the hook. But the next time this happens, you get your nose up against the chalkboard for 1 hour. I thought you knew how important school was. Maybe I thought wrong. All the other kids are at recess, so go now. So
yeah, we went right back. I mean, she was very serious. She was great working with her, making these stories. Anyway, so what? What was the impact? The impact was we created a lot of jobs. 2 of my students got hired at Apple. One of my students refused. He got offered a mobile developer gig at Yelp, because the students who contributed to this project went for jobs, as they would. And one of my students rejected Yelp 3 times because he didn't agree with their UX strategy. I was so proud of him. He's a great guy. He's now running his own mobile development studio out in Mumbai. But really great guy. And he got a lot of publications out of it. And fun story, I got to go to Cuomo's home for cocktails. That was really cool experience. And whether you like him or not, I was being at the governor's home, having cocktails with the governor. It's just a really cool experience. Anyway, great impact. So that's kind of captures what I did in 2013. Just kind of, I have a few more slides to talk about what I'm doing now if you're interested, or I can take questions now. I have like 5 more slides if you want to talk about work in progress. I don't know if you have questions. Or just keep it going.
Yeah, you said 5 slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can
okay. I'm good on time.
go through it, and then we can leave space for people to ask questions.
Sure. So work in progress. Right now, I'm working on a new grant, recently awarded $400,000 to look at how we're preparing students for the future UX workplace. Like, if students need to know about how to create mixed reality experiences, what do you need to teach them, basically? How is mixed reality impacting workforce training? And how are we building research projects overseas and abroad? We had a past project on the New York City High Line looking at 360 VR, good stuff. We did another 360 VR project in Edinburgh, Scotland, called Jupiter Artland. And this Jupiter Land is a massive museum of outdoor land art, and it's massive. And this is one art installation on this property, and this is someone's driveway. Could you imagine? This is someone's driveway. This property is owned by a baron. I mean, this is some Downton Abbey kind of stuff here, old money, and this is someone's front yard. I couldn't imagine. Imagine like rocking up with your car and delivering pizzas or something. You know, you're just like rocking up with your pizza car, your Domino's pizza rolling up. Like, this is someone's front yard. And so they have lots of different sculptures. We did a whole bunch of 360 VR in this place. Right now, what I'm working on is I'm looking at the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 and using mixed reality to address that. We recently finished up a study. We got 2,224 responses about the emotional and mental health impact of COVID when we switched from being in classroom to the online format. And we're developing mixed reality solutions against that. Right now we're in the evaluation phase of those 7 solutions, so it's definitely a work in progress. Another work in progress coming soon. I'm putting out for publication next Monday. I have a deadline on this. And what we did is we looked at mixed reality solutions during the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So we're looking at how mixed reality can serve as a more sustainable solutions for promotion, advertising, and the performing arts. A lot of fun here, thinking about cups as interfaces, thinking about biodata as interfaces, with the sole purpose of being more sustainable and moving away from paper-based advertising. So basically, I do consulting services. If you know anybody who's looking for somebody like me to help them out, I have consultancy services going on. I've created a whole bunch of tools to build these systems and services and think about the UX. Here's 4 of them, from testing to building to curating. And also I run, obviously I run presentations. You're seeing one of them now. And I run workshops. I've done mixed reality workshops at Fujifilm, Walmart, and Verizon. And of course, I do have services where I can help with the production team and look at commercial applications if you have a company that needs that sort of support. So this is my last slide. I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns. And thanks for listening.